to play. Let's take you inside the tent, get you updated on the latest injuries in the Bay. Proud to partner with UCSF Health on this segment and bring in Associate Professor of Orthopedic Surgery, Dr. Nirav Pandya. Hey, good, Doc. What's going on?
I'm doing good. How are you guys doing?
We are fantastic. We are in the midst of this wonderful playoff run, but that also means that every injury is magnified and nerve-wracking. So Dre Greenlaw is playing, but we saw the back injury in Vegas. He was down for a while, and he's admitted, not going to be 100%. And so when he ends up down on the ground again over the weekend, I know he came back, but what's he dealing with, in your opinion?
I think with this time of the year, a lot of these soft tissue kind of like wear and tear injuries have a tendency to creep up. And just given the nature of the fact that they allowed him to play, this is really about pain control and can he be effective on the field. So, he had 11 tackles last game, but yeah, I agree. He did look a little bit slower, looked like he was having a tough time get up a couple times. But I think things working in his favor is, number one, the game being at Levi's. He's playing on grass as opposed to if they had to play in Dallas on turf. Turf is going to exacerbate a lot of these kind of back issues. And number two, the weather's going to be warmer. I think I'd get a little bit more worried end of January, beginning of February when the weather gets colder. So I think all those things will be working in his favor. And the fact, which is huge as well, too, is that Jason Peters is going to be out for Dallas, so he doesn't have to go against a huge, well-known offensive lineman up there. So all those things I think are going to put it in his favor to not have that back impact him a lot, but something we need to watch as the playoffs go on.
Samson Ebukam is dealing with a little bit of an ankle issue. He is day-to-day. How does this affect a pass rusher, and is it mitigated somewhat also, like Greenlaw, the fact that they're going to be on grass?
Yeah, I think the grass is the biggest part of this. I think with ankles and backs, that's where you're going to see the biggest impact from playing on grass versus turf. And I think with this and with Juwan Jennings as well, too, the day-to-day designation is really key. I think typically with these kind of injuries, when they get that designation, it's not about do they need to wait for something to structurally heal. It's like, let's wait and see if they can perform out there given the pain and swelling or whatever degree of instability they have. So I would assume if we see them at least practice by Friday, which I think is the key thing, they can get out by Friday, then I think they're pretty good to go for the weekend. And I wouldn't anticipate too much in terms of limitation. You can tape the ankle. You can have a good surface on there. You're not playing on turf. So I think there should be minimal impact on them. Maybe a little bit of a snap count, but not much in terms of performance.
Doc, I want to ask you about Trey Lance, and I guess it's a little bit of a 1-2 punch of a question. One, do you think he'll be ready for OTAs? And secondarily, the injuries injury that he suffered, but the fact that there were multiple procedures on it. Are we expecting by next season or that Trey Lance will look normal in terms of his mobility?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think he's going to be, based on what they're reporting, there should be no reason why he can't be at OTAs. And I think there's enough lead-in time for him to be able to get back the strength, get back his mobility before the OTAs start. And I think when we think about his injury in general, anytime as surgeons, for the most part, when we put hardware in, whether it's an ankle or a forearm, we say, look, this can stay in forever unless it begins to bother you. And if it begins to bother you and the bone's healed, then we can always take it out. So I think a lot of people are wondering, oh my God, this is a huge complication. This is something that happens. And almost it's a blessing in disguise for it to happen now, because what you don't want is come next season, September, October, where suddenly the hardware starts bothering him and then he needs to get it taken out. So assuming his bone's healed as they reported, they took the hardware out to deal with any irritation. This sets him up in the best position to rehab appropriately coming in the offseason. Now, will there be a little bit of setback in terms of the fact that he had to go through another procedure and he's been on crutches for a while? Absolutely. But I think there's well enough time remaining for him to be ready for OTAs and hopefully be close to regaining some of the mobility back without having to worry about if that hardware is going to bother him.
From the hardware to hard luck, James Wiseman with a new injury, an ankle, didn't scrimmage today, isn't expected to suit up against Boston tomorrow. What's the prognosis for Wiseman dealing with yet another injury?
Yeah, I'm getting a little bit concerned about this ankle injury because typically if you look at NBA players, somewhere between 1 to 4 games for most garden variety ankle sprains. And now we're getting into a couple weeks right now, so you worry, was this kind of a more moderate to severe ankle sprain? Was this potentially a high ankle sprain? So you do get concerned. You had ankle issues, even before he had his meniscus issue as well, too, last, a couple seasons ago. So you get these accumulation of injuries, his wrist, his ankle, his knee, and you start worrying, is this kind of be the trend with Wiseman? Hopefully this is all just them being more cautious given his knee. I mean, he's had such a good run with his knee. We were talking about it so much last year, and it's been pretty good. Maybe they just don't want anything to flare up in that knee given the ankle. But as the weeks go by, you do get a little bit more worried about, is this more of a moderate severe injury that could take 4 to 6 weeks as opposed to that typical 1 to 4 day, 1 to 4 game timeline.
Doc, playoff time, always great to have that perspective. Thank you.
No problem. Thanks a lot, guys. Have a good one.